Hello and greetings, my friend, to the next episode here, the Red Delta Project YouTube channel. I'm Matt Schifferly with another video to help you escape from the diet and exercise rat race. Today's episode is inspired by an email that I got the other day. Basically, a fellow listener calling me out on a message I've had a little bit of a pessimistic view on my YouTube videos, my podcasts and things, where I basically am stating that the majority of people who endeavor to get in shape fail to get the results that they want. I don't know, maybe my views are a little jaded from being in the industry and working in gyms for over 2 decades and just seeing people come into the gym doing the same routines and cardio and strength month after month, year after year. They're basically the same. And most people complain, it's like, I'm not losing the weight I want, I'm not building the muscle I want. Success stories, in my experience and just at large, seem to be few and far between. So why is this the case? And how can you prevent yourself from becoming one of the majority who don't get what you want and part of the minority who do? Well, first off, it to a large degree just boils down to simple statistics. 90% of the people out there are not going to be in the top 10% of a performance or a result. And that's just simply how numbers work. But I think one of the big misconceptions that we all fall for is underestimating, or is it overestimating, what entails that 90%. In business, the majority of businesses fail within the first 1 or 2 years. So that means that if you're in business longer than 2 years, you're in the minority of success. Even though you don't have a private jet, you're not a multimillionaire, you're not putting a dent in the universe, just by merely existing as a business beyond a few years, you're in the minority of successes. And the exact same thing goes with fitness. We have a lot of very hyped up survivor bias in our fitness culture. We always see the perfect bodies on social media. We're always seeing the before and afters and the testimonials of those who've had the most success. But nobody's broadcasting about their failures typically when it comes to their results in fitness, which means that we're surrounded by success stories, which makes it seem like those success stories are a good representation of the majority of people who endeavor for that. But it's like that little saying at the bottom of the old infomercials, results not typical, right? That basically means you're probably not going to get results like this. You're probably not going to be that successful. So basically, if you lose any degree of weight and manage to keep it off, if you build any amount of muscle and have any amount of like, oh, hey, my body's starting to shape, I would say that alone, just that, puts you in the top 10%. Because the majority of people never experience that. Why? Well, again, working in many gyms with clients, most people who endeavor to get in shape simply don't stay in the game long enough. They buy the gym membership, they buy the equipment. When I used to sell home fitness equipment, they get on programs and stuff, and they just don't last more than a couple of months. It's an old cliche. All the gyms get packed around New Year's Day and the beginning of the new year with New Year's resolutions, and everybody says, don't worry about it, they'll be gone by March. Because it's true, a lot of people just simply don't stay in the game. So one of the easiest ways that you can ensure you stay in that top 10% is just stay in the game. You just simply don't quit. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should always be sticking to the same diet or exercise program. This seems a little contradictory, but hear me out here. Because one of the biggest myths that I fell for, and I see people fall for all the time, which drastically reduces their chances of success, is believing that your success depends on the particular diet or workout program that you do. But one of the biggest lessons that we learn from a fundamental approach to fitness, which is what RDP is all based on, is that your success, it doesn't come from what diet you follow. It doesn't come from your workout program. It comes from how well your habits can influence the fundamental processes of mother and human nature that are responsible for your results. And when we believe that I have to pick the right diet or the right program, one, a lot of people, well, forget even quitting. They never even get started because they get caught in paralysis by analysis, endlessly searching for the right program or diet, and they just never get any sort of traction because they just get pulled around all the time. But then when they think, okay, I'm following the right program or the right diet, and it doesn't align with their schedule and their preferences and their abilities and stuff, and they have trouble sticking to it, and they think, oh, maybe I need to stop doing this. They feel like if I give up on this program or this diet, that means I'm giving up on the pursuit of the goal. And so you give up on the diet and you think, well, I'm not going to lose weight, or at least temporarily. And again, you get out of the game. Or, oh, I tried the high volume, German volume training or bodybuilding program, and it's beating me up and I can't do this anymore. I'm going to give up on the program. Therefore, I'm giving up on my chances of building any muscle. And again, you forfeit the game. But the fact is that, no, your results don't come from your diet or exercise program. Again, they come from how well you influence that fundamental process. So the thing to always do, though, is have adaptability. When you find people who are in that top 10%, you almost never find anybody who's like, yep, I found a great diet and exercise program and I stuck with it for 10 years and I got the results I want. That's not usually the way it works. It usually is the case of, well, I started doing this, and then I evolved into this, and then I evolved into that program, and then I made changes, and it's this constant change and evolutionary process that eventually gets you to where you want to go. But when you feel like you've got to be dogmatic about your approach, you usually end up quitting the approach and therefore quitting on the pursuit of the objective. So instead, what you want to do is start off with an approach, whatever diet, whatever program, and say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to have it bring me as far as I can. And then I'm going to change it. I'm going to modify, evolve, maybe try something completely different, but I'm never going to give up on the pursuit of the result, but I'm going to give myself the freedom to adapt and modify the approaches as I see fit so you can keep continuously making progress to get to where you want. And the next reason why a lot of people unfortunately end up in the frustrated majority rather than the satisfied minority is they focus on using too few an influential approach, or they're focusing on too few habits to change. Let me give you an example I run into a lot where people will say, okay, I want to lose weight. And I've read this book about how sugar is the spawn of Satan and everything like that. So I'm just going to cut sugar out of my diet. Okay, fine. Good start, absolutely. But remember, your results don't come from your diet or exercise habits. They come from how well you influence that process. Does sugar have an influence on that process? Absolutely. So therefore, it will do something. But it's only one influence. And depending on your consumption of sugar or processed foods to begin with, it may not be that much of an influence to begin with. So even though you make this change, it doesn't really have that much of a gravitational pull on that process of calorie balance. Therefore, it really may not do a whole heck of a lot for you. Not to mention that it can leave you wildly vulnerable to compensatory habits. So it's like, yeah, I stopped putting sugar in my coffee, but I added a stick of butter instead. It's low carb or whatever. It's like, yeah, but you took 15 calories out and you put 400 calories back in. So it really kind of snowballs into a bunch of behaviors that basically end up with not really doing a whole heck of a lot to influence the process. And therefore you think, well, okay, the sugar thing didn't work. I'm going to toss that away. Now I'm going to focus on zone 2 training during cardio and stuff. Again, all this stuff is great. It's legitimate. It's just too small of an influence to really do much of anything, especially in the long term. So instead, what you want to do is compound many influences on top of each other over time. It's like, okay, I cut back on sugar and processed foods. Great. And then I started doing more cardio. Great. And then I started improving my sleep. Great. And I started to cut back on alcohol. Great. All these things, add them up. Again, this is usually what happens when you find someone who has much bigger, especially long-term success. They're not going to point to one thing and say, oh, it's because I did this program, or it's because I did this push-up routine or anything. It's many, many things that they've stacked up and built up over time. You don't need to do it all at once. You can do one thing at a time and get used to it and then add something else. And that stuff all collectively adds up, which not only produces a vastly better success rate, it's also a heck of a lot easier to maintain because you don't rely on just one influence to carry the weight of all of your hopes and dreams. And then finally, probably one of the most important things that can make a big difference in you getting what you want and being in that top 10% is just getting more clear on exactly what that success means to you. For some people in fitness, success means building some muscle. For some people, it means losing weight. For some people, it just means not having any joint pain and having good energy and feeling great when they go out skiing or whatever. In my last episode of my Red Delta Project podcast, I talked about how one of the most empowering and liberating things you can do for yourself in life and fitness is to get really clear on exactly what you want. Because A, that means you don't waste your time pursuing things that aren't important to you. And B, you get much more direct and focused about what singular or few activities are going to have the biggest influence to get what you want. And so getting clear on what you want means that you're not chasing after this goalpost that's forever out on the horizon. Then we can actually not necessarily move the goalpost, but we can get clear on what goalpost you're actually pursuing. But when we're consistent, we're flexible and adaptable and let our program evolve, we know what we want, and we get more specific about what we're doing is helping us get there, your chances of success skyrocket, and you have a much greater chance of getting in that top 10%. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Love to hear from you down below in the comments section, and I'll see you in the next video. Be fit and live free.